How many of you been here for one of our previous sessions? Excellent, a lot of folks and a lot of new folks. The CNU Art Room is a kind of a special thing. We actually get into the nuts and bolts of the art and craft of how we do the work here in the New Urbanism. So a wide variety of different kinds of subjects. A really special presentation today, though. We've got Stefanos Polyzoides, one of the founders of the CNU, and one of the real kind of thinkers and writers of the CNU as well. And so one of the things he's been studying a tremendous amount is courtyard design and how you craft that particular kind of building type. And so he's kind enough to come today to talk to us a little bit about that subject. And so I don't want to get into his time, so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Stefanos Polyzoides. Thanks, Stefanos.
Thank you. This is my first time in this particular kind of format, and as I've been a professor for 27 years before I quit in 1995, and I haven't taught since, you're in deep trouble because I'm going to have about half an hour to professorize with you, which is good at the end of all of this. One of the most important, one of the fundamental accomplishments of the New Urbanism is that it actually ended up turning the world of buildings and space upside down, because since the preeminence of Siam urbanism and architecture took over the world in the 50s, 60s, buildings ended up floating in space, and space became a medium which was essentially residual. And that dissolved urbanism really as an identifiable placemaker, form giver, image maker in the world. And it was the CNU actually who insisted that by reversing this figure-field relationship, that the void became really the most important aspect of both architecture and urbanism, with actually, in a sense, returning to urbanism, having the void reconstitute this discipline and make it become prominent again after probably 3 generations in exile. And the issue, as you will see in my first slides, can you turn some lights off?
Yeah, actually, it's
controlling lights. Are they back there?
They're in the back again.
Perhaps I can flip them up.
If you can bring them down just a notch.
I'm going to try to maybe stand someplace where I can see. Maybe in this corner. Am I blocking anybody? Probably not. Do I have to stand here? How's that? Good. That's good. And I want to begin with a couple with a few slides of historic cities, just to remind you that there are public places. This is the piazza. This is the Spanish Steps, and the piazza of the in front of it, and Via Condotti. And you can see that the public space is beautifully configured, and the private space is also very compressed and very configured. And actually, the signatures of cities are not only their buildings, but the signatures of cities are really the relationships between the private voids and the blocks in the streets, and the blocks in the squares. You can see this beautifully also in the way in which things change from city to city. This is Quito in Ecuador, where I was a very short time ago, and you can see major plazas, and again, a balance between public space, streets, and private space captured by building, and then Manhattan. And what is most extraordinary, the proof is very simple. I mean, this is not a scientific proof, it's really an experiential proof. Every single one of traditional cities that is organized under this discipline, of thinking discipline, is really different from every other. There is not a single village, town, or city in the world that is traditional and looks like same as every other. And yet everything we build under Siam modernism looks the same as everything else, because the void is not preeminent. So when we talk about, and this is Pasadena, an American suburban city, low intensity city, but yet its own character. So when we talk about courtyard housing, courts in effect, what we're talking about is a type that is operating within a spectrum of typology of intensity. It translates from single-family houses probably to towers along this drawing that you see at the top. It is really characterized, organized by its emphasis on open space and public space, inside it and beyond it and around it, and is operating, I think, at the very best, it's operating in the sort of robust T4 territory. This is very important for you to understand, because we're not talking about every kind of building of this kind and every kind of circumstance. We're talking about a particular slice, because if there are various kinds of courtyard housing that are operating within T4O and T5, which are denser hybrid, and which involve complications that I'm currently writing about in a book that I can't even get into. But the fact is that you need to think about this as being space-driven and operating within the middle range of housing, which is the rarest ones, and the missing ones referred in this Congress over. And this is a typical fabric. This is sort of is the habitat of this type. You have to think about this as a sort of photographing gazelles in Africa. This is courtyard housing in Los Angeles in a project in the city of Orange, in Orange County, I should say, and you can see that it is both operating within this transect intensity, but it is also beautifully compatible with other buildings within this intensity, because its pieces, its built pieces and its voids are house compatible. And this is where the genius of T4 American town making is, that building types across a pretty serious range are all talking to each other and together form the city well. And this is an example of that. This is Seven Fountains, the first project we did of this kind 11 years ago, and it's sitting right there in the midst of buildings, some of them old, some of them new, probably a range of buildings of about spanning probably 100 years. And nonetheless, you can see how this building habitat allows that type to flourish. And this is a 5-minute review of the book Courtyard Housing in Los Angeles, illustrated by recent buildings of ours, which we tried to build every one of these. We're not totally successful. 12 dwellings per acre, bungalow court. Bungalow court, basically taking individual units, separating them, organizing them around shared space, parking in the back. Attached court, these buildings actually, are connected side to side, shoulder to shoulder, parking underneath, behind it on the sides. Attached and stacked, which are the most interesting courts, where actually you both touch and stack these kinds of buildings. Then a hybrid court, where one part of the court is elevator driven and double loaded, one part elevator driven. Probably up to any story, but we build on any height, but we've only built it for ourselves. And you see how amazing the range. We're talking about T4, and of course the two to the right are probably at the very edge of T4, but nonetheless, we have bungalow court at 12, attached court at 25, attached and stacked at 35, hybrid court at 50, and hybrid court double loaded at 60. And these involve 2 cars per unit. So these are remarkable density numbers, much higher actually with one car per unit. One could get a lot more density. It's an amazing way to think that you have house compatible types that are operating at 40 DU per acre. I mean, it's just completely incredible, because 25 years ago, you would go into a city council meeting in some town in America, they would hang you if you said you wanted to build 40 DUs per acre next to a house. And the other miraculous thing about this type, and this range of typology in the missing section of the transect, is that you can also walk, because all of these things are walk-ups, and I'll talk about this in a moment. You can actually have lofts, of an unusual height, California lofts or industrial lofts, townhouses over flat lofts, townhouses over townhouses, flats over townhouses, and any combination of these types that you can derive the most extraordinary richness possible out of the dwelling environment in which we live. And because this is a kind of very foreshortened and painful introduction to the subject, this was so superficial, nonetheless, I want to remind you that the very essence of courtyard housing is that there are no elevators, lobbies, or corridors in this project. Basically, you enter the realm of a lot with a building on it. You either enter the units directly or up a stair into units. So you get flat over flat, flat over townhouse, or flat and townhouse. I mean, that's exactly about I guess you can get townhouse over townhouse. This is the combinations you can have. Always direct access always no common space. So you save about 15% of construction cost, and you have to spend it in the garden. And these are the types that we've managed to build in the last years. We built about 30 of these projects. Actually, we've designed about 30 and built about half of them in a very kind of hard-fought, quiet, but kind of resolute way of going about it. This was done. This is our the #1 project we did in our office in 1980. Pasadena Heritage asked us to move this court across town, and we picked up all these buildings and moved them about 3 miles and set them back. Excuse me, and set them back. One more. Set them back on a new site and built a peripheral road and garages and backyards for them. The site they came from was about this big. So this is a wonderful example of rejuvenating and rebuilding a historic court and learning a lot about what that meant. It's particularly important that you can build a building like that in a residential neighborhood with single-family houses, either 3, 4, 5 units per acre, and all of a sudden you get 4 times the density here, and the thing is miraculously consistent with the world and respectful of the world around it. And then we begged on our knees for 10 years for somebody to, the book was built in 77. We begged on our knees for at least 10 to 12 years for somebody to actually build one of those for us. And in the end, nobody would. So we bought that lot behind our office and built the first one since about 1937. And actually, we made about $53,000, which was really, at that point in our lives, an amazing amount of money, and which is good. So basically, what we learned from the book, we applied. You can see paired units. First of all, when you're dealing with units that are fee simple, you don't have to repeat anything, and you don't have to stack anything. The repetition is only a matter of architectural interest. And so what we in fact did is we paired these, we made this the same, and we put live-work units here, so you could enter both from the side and from the street. It's a corner arrangement. There's a special unit in the corner with a live-work unit there, special unit here, special unit here, special unit here, special unit here. The result is that there are 10 units, of which about 6 are different and 4 approximately the same. And this building began the extraordinary inflation of per square foot prices for condominiums in Pasadena. When we started this process 11 years ago, condos were selling in the $350 to $400 territory at the upper edge, and they're currently selling in the $650 to $750 because of this work. Not this one in particular, but in this kind of vector. The first really great project that we built was 7 fountains, and it was built on 2 lots, about 120 by 160 feet. It has 4 courtyards, and there's a parking courtyard here. You go under the building here and park in this portion of the building underneath, and this is a hard court over the parking, stairs down to a soft parking, soft court, very verdant court, and then pairs, and so on, and a lot of unusual pieces as well. And then the lesson for the first time that you can actually think of the space between buildings as an irregular set of interesting passages, almost like a townscape. This is a building on its side, and this is a central courtyard with proportions of space between buildings that we've learned to dominate and to understand, and I'll describe that to you shortly. This building was built 11 years ago for $6 million, all in, soft and hard, including the land, and it just sold for $23 million. And it's made out of wood and stucco. But what is unusual about it is that all the units are so different from each other and so idiosyncratic that in an environment like that, which is really basically a movie industry and music industry environment, people would pay what gives them pleasure to buy, and they would do it when they find something unusual and unique. This is a soft garden, and then this is a garage that shows both the hard-soft differentiation, but also shows the house compatibility. It's about 35 views per acre because there is a work room within each unit by West Hollywood zoning. So there are 20 units and 20 rooms. You can have a business in your own house with a separate entrance, which gave us an enormous opportunity to do crazy things like build all the stairs going up from everywhere to everywhere, just to differentiate the workroom from the regular room. So this was an unusual learning opportunity, and then this is an example of the much closer to 50 DUs per acre, which is double loaded here. You can see the elevator there. I'm sorry, there in the lobby. And you come up, you have to connect from here to here, that's it, and all of this is stacked 4 stories. Townhouse below, 2 flats above. And these are 2 and 3 stories everywhere. 2 stories here to allow the southern sun to enter. 2 and 3, all walk up. Stairs here, stairs there, stairs here, and so on. And this is what the building looks like on the outside. And this is what the interior is. The first courtyard with the townhouses and the corridor. It's a loggia and a balcony on the second level. And this one is the second courtyard. This is selling in the $650 square foot territory. It's a very, very popular place. It's impossible to buy in there because people move and buy and stay. And this is from the point of view of urbanism an important thing to see, because what this architecture is compatible with a single house does is it can be played down within a block to extraordinary degrees and advantages in moderating the densest forms of this courtyard housing with smaller forms. For instance, this is a competition drawing, and you can see in a single block there are 2 boulevards on either side. There is a piece here in the edge which is double loaded, purely double loaded, and becomes courtyard housing single loaded behind. And in the alley parts, which are the short parts, there are some very, very much smaller buildings, house scale buildings. So what you end up is a view like a version of this on the boulevard, which is robust, as you can see, with significant differentiations always on the fourth level. That's a very strong way of differentiating these buildings, cutting it back, eating the corner away, inset balcony, projecting balcony, retail at the bottom. And then the side street is a series of row houses, and the alley is a series of houses. So that within a single block is really a remarkable way of differentiating and compacting this kind of architecture within a walkable mixed-use urbanism. And there is also some very unusual kind of outlier examples. We're working on a project at Rio Nuevo, which was one of the projects we designed in Arizona, which is well worth visiting and under construction. There's some very interesting things going on there. And this was supposed to be a street that was going through to the edge of the site, and a developer builder decided to use the street, bought all the lots, about 6 lots on either side, and put a gate on one side and a gate on the other, which is open during the day and closed at night, and decided to take the street that was projected like this through this place. And he's actually setting buildings back, sometimes very dramatically. And he's actually made courtyard housing out of it by sharing the public space and controlling it during the night and keeping it flexed, shared or public. It's really an extraordinary.
What is the name of that?
Rio Nuevo is the name of the project in Arizona. It's in Tucson. And then back to the issue of courtyard housing as a type. What we've learned over this last 30 years is that, and here I'm showing only buildings, but you can not voids. I'm illustrating buildings, but you can see 7 fountains in city context, and you can see how in a variety of ways, in a variety of configurations, whether it's a central courtyard or a side yard, a combination of side yards, or a dull side yard with a shaped side yard, or a complex project like 7 Fountains, which loves its neighbors because it really cuts holes, reduces density, allows light and air to flow through, and so on. It really begins to indicate how good an urban maker, a city maker, this kind of type is. And these are 4 pages from a forthcoming book on the architecture of density, that you can see all of our work, all of our projects drawn, and you can see how this simple type can be interjected on irregular sites, on very irregular sites, on outright peculiar sites, on normative sites, on big sites, small sites, with repeating buildings, with not repeating buildings, with extravagantly unusual buildings. All of these are really most amazing ways of showing how one simple idea about a kind of building can actually render truly miraculous results, all of which speak not to anything else, but the fact that this very flexible fabric can then make interesting city both at the solid level and at the void. So I thought it would be very, very useful for you to see how one makes. First of all, we're going to have an exercise in which we're going to try to make a building like this in half an hour, whatever it takes, 20 minutes. But it'd be useful for you. I think there are two pieces of information I think I want to disclose to you as before you do this. And I was very lucky because James showed me yesterday the presentation they had done on the making of a neighborhood. So I've decided to follow their lead and do it exactly the same way. I'm going to show you, first of all, a project of ours. And I'm very lucky, we're very lucky because I have a project the way we showed to a design review commission. So it's actually an intact presentation. So you can see how this thing is cast, as an idea. And the second part that I'm going to show you is what are the 10 principles that one can utilize to make to design this kind of work. And then we'll turn the lights off and start drawing. So this is the site. It's sitting on a boulevard. Can you actually tell me when we have 30 minutes to go? Sure. Okay. So this is the site sitting on a boulevard, and a fairly complex site where the boulevard shifts. And the first step is choosing an architectural type and working within its rules. You see, I'm trying to tell the Planning and Design Commission what it is that they're doing. In Pasadena, we're very lucky because we have one of the oldest rules, this existing site, as it is right now. And in Pasadena, we have the City of Gardens Ordinance, which is probably the oldest form-based code in the land, done by Dan Solomon, Christopher Alexander, and Phoebe Wall about 28 years ago. But unfortunately, it was done only for one type. So we have a silly zoning code with this great document that tells that shows you how to make housing. Anything over four units in the neighborhoods has to be courtyard housing. So we are choosing courtyard housing. We have no choice, and I'm also illustrating to the Design Review Commission extraordinary examples of courtyard housing, some of which they know and some they don't know. But I'm just definitive about the fact that this stuff exists in the city, and it plays a very important role both in the lives of people and in the market. And it has certain important design characteristics. For instance, this is about 25 units per acre, and it sits on a boulevard with a house form facing it, which is really kind of remarkable. All of these are in the courtyard housing building. And this is the possible typical City of Gardens project, which is a project that would be garden in the middle with two arms, because that's the normative type. But amazingly now for Mrs. Alexander Wall and Solomon, they have no corner instructions for this type. Aha! So this is the project we attempted to make, and you'll see why we tried to do this. So we're pulling the garden to the side in part to save the building next to us, so we turn our face to it as opposed to our back. And there are some other extraordinary opportunities that you will see also that come out of that thickness in the body of the building. So the second step is defining, after choosing a type and working with it, is defining an architectural character in context by choice of massing frontages and both building and garden design ingredients appropriate to this place in the city, in the city being affected. So this is what's around us. I'm showing you this not to scare you, but to just simply tell you that sometimes architecture of this kind has to be responsive to a context, but very often in places like this, it has to set the context. It becomes the first of the next kinds of buildings. And then I showed them examples of the source, always going back to the source of where this architecture comes from on the character side. This is Quito, and illustrating the idea of the engaged city wall with a fabulous entrance and then ways of leaning over public space to command it. We have a beautiful tool in the zoning Pasadena zoning code, which is height averaging. So it is possible to take to take the maximum height and take half your building above it and half below it. So it allows us to actually break up massing. So we went from 40 average to 45 and 35 in 3 parts. And then we're able, within that structure, you're probably going to get, it looks like a Rubik's Cube, and it is. There are some flats, some townhouses, lots of overlap, extremely, extremely unique and unusual internal conditions of design of the units, which have to do with the fact that this client had half of the plan, half of the program be under 600 feet and half of the program be over 1,500. And these are the character drawings that you showed them. Massive towers of this kind. This is again in Quito. Wonderful examples of projecting out into streets and making contiguous street walls. This is Salamanca, I think. Spanish balconies, ways of projecting the public spaces, are all intended arcades, public and semi-public elements. These all shown to the public commission, always going back to original sources, never the American derivatives. Entranceways and courtyards and the placement of objects in courtyards, doors, windows, and then gardens. This is what we showed them on the present side. And then we understand character then to be the taking of all these things and building them together into a nascent image that is definitively of a kind, but does not have the architectural expression that comes out of a single hand. So this is the building in place. You can see on the left-hand side the stairs taking to townhouses. There's a projecting balcony there, a corner tower, the courtyard on the side, and that's the way in which the building sits in that corner. And one of the reasons, of course, is that for making it symmetrical and central on the side is that the boulevard, as you remember, just shifts around. So as you're coming through it, you're looking at this building just dead on, just like that, and then you skirt around it. And the third step is that architectural style proposed is integration of type and character issues into an expression that's unique and contemporary. I mean, it's something that comes out of then the heart of whoever has the privilege to draw the final thing in all this detail. And you can see how the building is now growing a face. It's growing an expression. It's growing materials. It's growing a texture along with a more precise proportioning and scaling of its elements. And here it is. That's the outer. Excuse me, we're going the wrong way. The outer face of the boulevard is actually broken down into various building scale elements. The symmetrical front is really a singular expression of the building as one approaches by car, and then the internal version is even more broken down into various pieces. And then a proposal about the garden. The garden is a very important part of the building. It is secured. It has water in it. It has a barbecue fireplace. It allows people to cross and come through. And there are all kinds of private garden entrances to the ground floor of the building like that. You can see sketches. This is all design commission stuff. You've been through it 1,000 times, I know. And this is really the building, the way it emerges from this process. It is still not styled yet, although after this layer of consideration, it is actually getting damn close, right? And this is what it looks like with a commitment to a singular way of being built. And what we're going to do is look and do we have this? We're going to look at this 10 issues, and I'm sorry I didn't have this illustrated. I sat last night in my room and after a couple of beers, just scribbled. Yes, Laura. Scribbled some serious explanations of what these things look like and why. I hope you're taking notes of all of this because it's going to be a quiz very soon. I'm trying to find my glasses. They're not there. are going to do.
Let's see. I'm going to look at the camera here. Actually, I'm going to be honest.
Okay. Put it back up. So I'm going to give you the 10 characteristics. They might be in a slightly different order because I didn't remember them very well. All right. That's great. Should I do it? Do this one?
Let's see.
Can you get closer?
Yeah, you just kind of aim it in there.
It's not. We're not doing. It's not doing
Oh,
it.
there, you want to see this? Yeah, just slide it down here and then there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Include the camera.
Actually, I think we should do it so we can read it, right?
There you go. Yeah. Just
That
facing it,
might
facing
be
it.
that might be a good idea. Can we get any closer or no?
I could probably try this.
Yeah,
See if
try
I
it.
can- See if I can bring it down by hand anyway. Maybe just by hand I'll bring it.
Okay, so there's not to waste time. The key ingredient, size. Yeah.
Just keeping this right at the top. Sorry. Just maybe I'll leave it zoomed down a little bit.
Is that easier for you all? Can you see it a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Key ingredient, size. We have a patio, a courtyard, and a quad. And always within the lot of an individual building, 20% of the lot size has to be in open space. And the smaller the lot, that is one space, but when the lot gets enlarged, it becomes a possibility of multiple spaces, including maybe quads, courtyards, and patios, depending on the circumstances, okay? A patio is about 15 to 25 feet, and it refers typically to being controlled by one house. A courtyard is about 35 to 45 feet, and is shared by multiple units. And a quad is up to 125 feet, shared by multiple buildings as well, by multiple buildings. One house, multiple units, multiple buildings. And in colder climates, because somebody asked me about Toronto, the longer and the colder the climate, the larger and wider the courtyard. Because when you're in a hot climate, you really want to keep the sun out, and when we're in a cold climate, you want to pull the buildings out and allow, particularly in the winter, for the sun to melt the snow. So patio about 25 feet, courtyard housing 40, 45 feet, quad bigger. The second issue, can we see it? It's a little bit difficult to see. Maybe you can bring it a bit further, over the, can you move it sideways? Just in case? That's much better.
There we go.
But we're not done it. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Go on, please. Yeah, that's better. So, right. Yeah. There we go. That's much better, isn't it? So I can just turn pages, huh? Okay, on the left, shapes. You can see on the left multiple and regular courtyards. Both multiple and regular, both kinds. If the site is larger than 20% of the court configuration, we generate more such spaces. And then on the bottom, multiple irregular courtyards. Figure stretches to the edge of the site, distorting courtyards or distorting the buildings. The buildings are about 35 feet, take it from me for now. It could be 36 or 33, but 35 for today. And on the bottom right, any absurd array of courtyard shapes that warms your heart. And then on the right hand side, front and back issues. Basically, if the courtyard is here, and a unit is here, and a courtyard is there, you can actually put living rooms, bedrooms on both of them, and kitchens, bathrooms in the middle. If you only have backyards here and another building here, and here you have just another courtyard, then you have to put bedrooms and living rooms that way. So you really, facing the courtyards, you want as much regular room, living space as possible with services out of sight, side by side in buildings or on the service side. If you want me to, at some point, I can make some images of this and send you over the internet, because there's some interesting notes in here. When units are facing out, okay, if there are multiple courtyards in a single scheme, service rooms are placed on the side walls, etc. This is key because courtyards of this type are contemplative spaces and need to be surrounded by non-service rooms, okay? Number 4 is our sections. Section is about how light comes into a place like this. When a courtyard is 40 feet, then it can be 30 on one side and 20 on the other, or 35, 30, and 20. You can see that dropping one side is always advantageous because it allows for the sun to penetrate. You basically, what you don't want to do with this kind of project is to do this, because we have a word for it, and it's called light well. And generally, breaking up the height of adjacent building allows us for light to penetrate and makes it livable through all the seasons. The size of each courtyard determines the actual height of buildings around it, depending on orientation. Here you can see in 2 and 2 story, and 3 and 2, and a 4 and 3. And in all cases, trees outlined in ways that they actually frame the space. I think that's clear, right? And then all the frontage types that are relevant and applicable to an architecture on the public realm side of the building are also available and helpful for defining the faces of a courtyard. And here you have a hanging balcony and a tower, and here you have basically an arcade with a balcony above it. And there are, of course, countless other examples. And this one at the bottom, both of them actually are facing a courtyard. Canopy has to do with shade. This is mainly a landscape issue, although canvas can also work. Landscape architecture operates with forms that are parallel to building architecture, walls, columns, canopies. So the location, size, and spread of a tree can critically affect the amount of light and light and warmth that reaches every unit within a courtyard. When large trees hover over a courtyard, the light is subtle and varied. In the last case, this is shady, this is sunny, and this is balanced. Deciduous trees are best as they allow for seasonal variation. Orientation is crucial in determining planting locations. Seventh item is ventilation. Cool air rises. The zaguan, which is the traditional Hispanic form of connecting courtyard and street, draws air from the outside because of the rising of the cool air in the courtyard, and pushes through the courtyard in its fountains, dropping the air temperature and causing a sensation of coolness through air movement. To begin with, well-shaded zaguans and courtyards are well cooler than their surroundings, often by 10 or 15 degrees. If the courtyard is depressed by 2 or 3 feet in hot climates, the cool air ponds, further enhancing the feeling of coolness. And this is a very classic Arizona trick. The two other issues are the issues of access, and they're very important, is that in colder and particularly rainier climates, a path of circulation from the street to the unit under cover, including stairs, is particularly desirable. In such cases, the width of courtyards needs to be enhanced. And you can see here, if you enter at this point, there's a porch. You can peel to the right to reach these units. You can come to the courtyard, there's probably some kind of arcade in here, reaching stairs. You come through this point and this point to feed the back, and you have stairs there, and so on. You can see it's a network that you build that allows complete access. And on the right-hand side, access to parking is very essential, because you both want to be centralized in the way you access parking, and you want the parking access when you're not central, whenever you have it, to be off the courtyard. Courtyards are not particularly they have a lot of attitude, courtyards, they're very sensitive. So you cannot stick things into them. They have to be whole. They have to be whole by themselves. And access to parking needs to leave the courtyard unaffected, but also the issue of access to parking by elevator is crucial, because when the elevator penetrates the deck and rises to upper floors, it triggers all kinds of ADA compliance issues that can raise havoc in a project. So as long as the elevator comes to the deck, you don't have those issues. And all units are walk-ups. And the final issue is focus. The emphasis on a dominant architectural element for each courtyard strengthens the contemplative emphasis of the courtyard as a place in this kind of housing, and an introduction of active uses and activities in the space immediately undoes it. And you can see one of the classic examples in California courtyard housing, a fireplace in a courtyard, and then also a major fountain in a lesser courtyard with a planet below. So I hope this very fast explanation gives you some very clear idea and some inspiration about how to make this kind of project. And I will give you the following very simple instruction. And we'll just maybe James and I both can go around and.
Sure.
How much time do we have?
We're just about a half hour left.
Okay, so that's almost perfect. So what we'll do is this: we'll take a piece of land that is let's say it's 2 by 3. Let's say it's 120 by 180. We'll assume that we don't have to worry very much about the street. But let's say we assume it's a 60-foot street right away, and that the street is right here, and that there is maybe a 30-foot street with 15-foot setback on our side, and that on this side we have a neighbor with a 10-foot setback, which is a very brutal one, and on this side we have a neighbor with a 10-foot setback with a little bit of a cut in the back. So this is 10 feet, and this is 20 feet. And in the back we have a neighbor that gives us a 20-foot
computer pie.
So our side is right here. So this is how I would like you to start thinking about it. And I'll give you only a few hints, and then you can go full speed against the wall. Multiply 120 by 160. Multiply 120 by. Okay. Multiply 120. Multiply 120 by 160 and get 20% of that for open space. That's the minimum open space you have to have. The buildings are 35 feet wide, and what I would like to do is I would like to make the figure of a building of this kind without thinking too much about what you heard, and then take one courtyard under the 10 points and try to design it, as big as you can on your sheet. So there are 2 drawings necessary: a small sketch of a figure, and then another drawing is just a drawing of a courtyard within your figure. Okay? Let's say that south. Do you remember what this looks like? You saw it before, right?
No.
You didn't. You pulled it back. Okay, you have to give me some. Remember, all of these characteristics are important, but the one that's most interesting is that the frontages are there to accommodate the arrangements of units above. So depending how elaborate your scheme is, if it's not very elaborate and you're just dealing with attachment, you don't have to go back up at all. So the only reason for you to have frontages inside this courtyard is when you go to 3 stories, because at 3 stories you have to basically get to the second story by stair, and the stair can be either exposed or it can be inside an arcade. It can be all kinds of things. Anyway, this is it, and I'll repeat. This is 120 feet front. The street is 60 feet wide, 15-foot setback, 10-foot setbacks here, 20 in the back, and north is this direction. 120 feet by 180. So if you multiplied 120 times 160 and took 20%, you 120 by 120 by 180. Sorry, that was a tricky thing. Multiply by 20%, and then decide the shape and character of your courtyard, and design this building from the void to the solid. This is, basically the units within are going to be designed like salami. We're going to cut them at the end as we need to. But what you're doing is you're making a void, you're interconnecting the voids, you're locating stairs in the voids, and then you get to second levels and you go from there. But for now, just the voids. And then enlarge one of those voids and let's work on it, okay?
That's great.
Any questions? It's pretty simple, actually. Parking is underground. Parking is underground, so someplace there needs to be an elevator that takes you all the way through to the basement. Now, why is parking underground? Because when you're dealing with 40 and 50 use per acre, the cost of land is so high in those kinds of places that you cannot really use land for parking. So you're buying the land underneath the building as extra land almost to accommodate the parking and build density on top of it. Do we need to put the lights on? Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll let you work for a few minutes. So if there are any questions, just raise your hand and we'll just come to you. And actually, this is open book, so we could share questions. Oh, I like this. I'm beginning to think about quitting work.
Too much brain units assume 35 by 35.
Yeah, no, the depth, yeah, 35.
35 square would give you 1200.
How does everybody feel in terms of your pens and pencils? I've got some mechanical pencils if you want to do more lightly, and I've got a few markers if someone needs something thicker. Is everybody comfortable?
Mechanical pencil.
Mechanical pencil? Okay.
I think you're going to need at least a couple of different kinds of instruments. Maybe a light pencil to draw with first, or a light pen even, and then some thicker pen to give outline to the building against the courtyard. And then you need a thin pen also to draw inside the courtyard. And maybe some color. Yes, sir.
What's the climate?
Pardon me?
What's the climate for this building?
Let's do hot and dry, which is the one we know. Dallas, maybe. Yeah, where we are. Thank you. Saved my life, Andrew. That's good.
I have mechanical pencils if anyone would like something to draw more lightly with.
What is the side set?
Side setback is 10.
10, 10, and 20.
10, 10, and 20 the back. By the way, it's not unusual for these kinds of places not to have any active community outdoor places. Sometimes there's a community room that is shared in a prominent place, but sometimes there might be a little plunge or a jacuzzi or some kind of place in the back that is not exactly a pool. There's never enough space in a place like this to have a pool because of the density.
The setback is into the property, or that's just the distance to the next property across?
In the back, we have 10 feet to the property, 10 feet to the building on either side, and 20 feet to the building in the back.
Okay.
Do we assume that we like those building spaces? Are those living spaces? Is that
We assume that you hate them, but these people are very important to you in getting permission to build on your side. So you have to serve every last of their wishes. You have to be really nice to them.
Gotta roll a trace of it.
Because they're going to come out in huge numbers to contest what you're doing if you take their light off.
How wide of a path is too wide to begin to break down the quality of the enclosed space?
The path meaning the path of circulating inside space like
For
that?
instance, earlier you showed a courtyard that you offset to the side, you go at the face of the adjoining building.
Yes.
Is the 10-foot setback, is that too open, or how close do those need to be to create that enclosure?
Well, I think that you have to draw this in section and satisfy yourself over it. There's no single answer to the question. I think that the 5-foot setback on a 4-story building is not an adequate setback. A 10-story building on a 2-story building, a 10-story setback on a 2-story building might be almost too much. So you have to figure out, but maybe you can build against it. But so the question is, how are you going to treat your neighbors? Are you going to treat them with the back or with the front? Now, theirs is a back, mind you, because the front is on the other side. Yeah.
Where is vehicle loading? There's no alley, is there?
There is no alley in this example.
Okay. So vehicle loading has to
Yeah, but don't get too deep into the weeds because you'll never get out of them. In other words, try to build a figure of void and solid first. Assume you have just a very rough way of getting in, and go from there. Okay? Because what you want to do is you just want to balance these two things. The way you would typically design a thing like that is you would iterate and iterate and iterate, introducing these things one at a time, and think about this project completely until it made sense to you. After the 10th time.
Is there a laneway, like for parking, is there laneway access at the back, or it's right on?
No, there is no access from the back, but it's of no consequence actually. If you want to enter from the back, you can enter from the back, or you can enter from the front, because you're not drawing garages. Assume you can go from either side, it doesn't really matter. Okay? If you want to set back in the back to another building, fine. If you want an alley, it's fine too. Actually, in many ways, this density requires an alley if you were to set this up as a new urbanist project. But very often you find lots like this in cities where there are no alleys. It's a whole other problem. Are we doing on the internet side? There has to be at least one question every 30 seconds, otherwise we're in trouble.
Might be in trouble, sir.
Huh?
Might be in trouble, sir.
Okay, so tell me what it is.
Or if you want to, we can take select ones and put them under the document camera so they can see that.
No, I think that's like the cameras on there.
I have 8, so we can just have a public collection.
Some people are listening north and there's sketchbooks.
North is that way? The south's coming from our right?
I
Okay.
believe so, yeah.
Okay.
What if we can use basically this in the front to this get there? And then the wall we
You
can
know, we
get.
should, I did it, we should move the two tables back to back. Put all the books next to each other and have people stand around.
Okay, yeah, maybe spring up front and want to show them what they want to frame it until 3:15. So we've got that.
Okay, so I think it's time to walk around. Oh, we have some architects in this room, that's nice.
I didn't realize we're actually beginning to draw. We're just gonna watch you draw, but that's fine.
That's all right, good job. Good job.
The road is how wide?
The road is 60 feet right away, and therefore the sidewalk in front of our building is 15 feet wide. 30-foot road, 15-foot sidewalk on either side.
And you're imagining a busy road because it's
Well, it's a neighborhood. I think it's a neighborhood. No, it's not very busy. We all have this tendency to be drawing like this, you know, scribbling a little bit at a time, which is fine because it's tentative. But in about 7 minutes, I'm going to say, redraw the profile of your figure now. And actually, what you should do is take a parallel piece of paper, make another rectangle, and just in single long lines draw the entire figure very freely, fluidly. Okay, it helps the soul, the kind of drawing. How are we coming along? You're doing an excellent job. Go for it. Actually, one of the things you might want to do, well, is everybody drawing on sheets of, some people are drawing on sketchbooks. Okay, don't worry about it. That's fine.
Got extra trace here too, again, if anybody wants to lay a sheet over top for benefits. Which one I'll use it today.
It's very important to be drawn. The reason why this exercise is so very valuable is because it allows you to think about building volume and garden, open space, simultaneously without a scale in your hands. In other words, you have to develop this kind of fluidity, understanding the size of open space and building and design just in this open-ended way. Let your hand become used to the idea of rolling with that kind of uncertainty. And this has led me into while you're working, I'll tell you a couple of stories. This has led me into another kind of investigation past individual building types. And the book that I co-wrote on the plazas of New Mexico is really a book about how one makes similar kind of space at the public scale, the monumental public scale, in the center of towns, again connecting, outdoor rooms of a certain kind of magnificent presence with great commercial and public buildings. Because there's a beautiful parallelism between the scale of a center of town and the scale of a small building of this kind, and it all has to do with the emphasis on beginning from the void and using the void as the catalyst for making a shared place. One of the greatest weaknesses of the architectural profession is if you ask somebody how wide and long is a concourse to Rockefeller Center Plaza, I don't think any of us would know. It's a reflection of education and a reflection of what are the dimensions of the Place Vendôme. What is the distance between the Moskva River and the Kremlin? Those are important questions because they really have to do with the buildings don't exist without the space in which they find themselves, or the space they determine through their form. And the more you use the memory of this exercise to control space in dimension relative to building, the better off you're going to be, I think, in whatever you do, whether architects or landscape architects or developers or planners or whatever you do in life relative to this magnificent profession. The management, the control of dimension, I think, is at the core of it. And we know almost nothing about it.
Like in Havana, where they had courtyard houses also, but they're not really courtyards. They're more like, and the bottom floor would have where businesses would have been, and then comes up and you have balconies and the families would live up above. Is that still considered?
No, that's not courtyard housing. I mean, a court. It's back to a diagram. It's back to a diagram I showed on the transect. Basically, if you have stacked flats, 3 or 4 stories or 5 or 6, and you have retail on the bottom, that is not courtyard housing, because in order to have courtyard housing, you have to have access to all the units without an elevator, a stair, and a corridor. And this is what gives the place its lesser volumetric definitions, looseness, and therefore its compatibility with single-family houses, and its place in T4 neighborhoods. Because in the moment you start stacking things relentlessly, what you have is the beginning of a T5 and a T6 type, which is not courtyard housing, it's stacked flats. It might have a space in the middle that is open, because every building has to have some access to light and air, but it's not a court in a traditional sense. Okay, so let's shift paper and make a more definitive and also slightly more present, meaning a more visibly drawn outline of what you've come to today.
Joyce.
So don't be too uptight about the precision of what you've drawn. It's more important to see the figures than to have them be terrifically wonderfully drawn. So we'll have another 3 minutes of this, and then we'll do another 5-8 minutes on some basic idea of a courtyard based on the criteria. Can you actually have a zero?
No, 20. Yeah. Zero.
I'll just give that to you. Okay.
Perfect.
What's the question? I think Christina has a question on the dimensions.
One plus 2 people, that's good. We're doing well.
We have a question about the setbacks.
Yes?
If it's a 120 with a 10-foot on either side.
No, okay. Let me make this clear. That actually is something I did not clarify for you. The 10-foot setback is really, the people next door to you are at 10 feet. If you can use your judgment and get as far back as you wish. I'm a liberal code. You're free to do whatever you want back there. Okay? The best of codes would say you can do 30% 5 feet and 40% 10 feet and the rest 20% nothing.
Does every unit have to have a courtyard facing, and does every wall of the courtyard have to be activated by a unit?
Yes. Yes.
Crap.
It's a tough thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, at both levels?
everywhere. Yeah.
So
Now, activated, what does activated mean? There might be, you might have a corridor, there might be a corridor someplace, you may be able to hide the corridor behind the wall or the window and a small balcony, and it could be looking the other way. I mean, because
but you can't have like the wall of the garage with some kind of transition zone, like units above, but you can't have the wall of the garage.
yeah, you can't have you don't want a blank wall anywhere really visible. You can have piece of blank walls, because no walls cannot be all windows. But I think you need to be careful to understand the residual openings onto the openings onto courts or the sides of courts as being balanced house scale openings with windows and doors. But
if you darken the pens here, I think if anyone wants to do a darker.
now look in front of you. These are the 10 characteristics. So in about 3 minutes when you're done, and you take one of your courtyards and start thinking about it, it might help you to.
Are all the units dual lit from two sides of the building?
That's the whole point. Yes, either directly or indirectly, meaning that sometimes you might be a little bit behind a corridor, very rarely, but you would still have some windows and so on. But by and large, the idea is that you come up at the corners of the courtyards or in the middle between the units, and then you rise and you have every unit looking back and forth. And that's a tremendous advantage. That's where the house comes from, right?
Should move this over here, we can clear this table off.
I actually thought I had something in the presentation that I don't have, which I regret. I must have lost it in the translation. I would very strongly suggest that you look at books from the 20s and the 30s. I have in my library a lot of books from particularly Southern architecture, Italian and Spanish, that have a lot of documentation drawings of classical and particularly traditional architecture, where architects have this fantastic capacity on one sheet to draw side plans, sections, elevations, garden details, drawer details, handles. Is just completely, absolutely fantastic. And what is extraordinary about this is that ultimately also you have to think about the most extreme case of an urbanist conscious architecture as being one that can be consistent from the region to the door handle in some good way. And learning how to operate within that continuum is not very easy. And those guys were masters. They were incredible.
I think I've got a surface here, and we can extend around here and place drawings around and invite folks up again if you like.
Sure, we put it on here too, maybe. But
And you can use this as well, that's right.
okay, I think it's almost time to finish up your sketch and enlarge the your courtyard. Look at the criteria. They're very few. Shape and size are self-evident. You've already done that. Room orientation, you don't have to worry about. You can see entrance. Where is the zagon? How are the courtyards interconnected? I think is this question. Unit access, I wouldn't worry about very much. Parking access would be nice to show where the ideal location for that would be. I think a section would be good, and then frontage, focus, and canopy. basically 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, and 10 is what this drawing is about, essentially. How you make a canopy, how do you work with frontages, perhaps, and so on 4 sides, and what do you put in the middle? And if you're working just in plan, it'll be fine too with a few notations. If you just got to plan only, that's good. They don't have to be symmetrical either. Remember. They're symmetrical. They're going to write nice to think about. So Dallas Press after yesterday's meeting. That's fine. It's good. Yeah. What I would do is I would take one of your courtyards. Is this it?
Yeah,
and I would draw. One of the important things to do about the courtyard, if you're drawing your plan this size, your courtyard should be this size. You don't draw the courtyard the same size as your plan. Don't illustrate the courtyard in the plan. Just punch it up, because every time you punch something up, it has the nasty effect of staring in the face with a tongue stuck out. Drawings are tough. So take this drawing and make it big right here. I think we've covered a lot of ground. That's good. And I would draw the courtyard without any building around it. Just make it as a void and just define it just with a single line. Don't give up. There's still life after this exercise. How are we doing over here? That's all right. There's little time left, and we should do is just grab this courtyard and try to understand what dimensions it and operate on it. Just think of it as a place and draw it.
Question.
Sir.
So, I'm from Oklahoma where it's very windy. Usually sun's the determining factor of courtyard dimension. Is there any research on wind?
Well, when you're dealing with a very small public shared room and you're 2 and 3 stories up, that already cuts down the wind significantly, really significantly.
So more, you can make it to where the...
I think the idea regarding comfort is that if you have a severe need to cover yourself from the rain, and there are very tropical places where this is the case, then you have to find some interconnected way to circulate in and out of courts under cover, which is not very easy, but it can be done. In all other places, it becomes a question of how do you protect yourself against the sun in the summer, and how to use the sun in the winter to advantage. That's really basic, and it's almost reversed in cold to hot climates. In Los Angeles, 6 months of the year you want to be in the sun, and 6 months of the year you want to be in a basement in the dark. It's so hot outside.
Use that as a reference when you should look at 1920s, 1930s kind of architectural books or studies or whatever.
These are all books from this period of time, which are documentations of villages and towns and cities, individual examples, and also larger treatises. And I'm trying to remember if there is any bibliography that I know. I'd be more than happy to share those with you. I'll go to my library and write them down. There's three or four books that are really pretty extraordinary. There's one book called Mexican Houses. I'm trying to remember the names of the authors, so they'll come to me. Which has the most beautiful composite drawings, plan section, elevation, and details. But there are many.
Stephanie, so we're down to about our last 5 minutes. We really have some
Okay.
things to share.
All right. Let's start. Whatever state you're in, let's pull stuff around and put it down and we'll walk around and check what's been done.
Bring your drawings up to the front if you like.
Yeah.
We've got a little space up here on these front tables. We can lay the drawings out. I've got some lights, and it's always a great part of this kind of a process to see what everyone's doing, to share a little bit. It's a quick exercise, by the way. I don't think expect anyone to finish drawing.
Put it right here, John.